All right, thank you for tuning in to the next episode of Crystal Ballers, episode 102. It is August 7th, 2024. We're here for all your fantasy football discourse, specifically Dynasty running back related this episode. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. I mean, it's hard to keep up every year. If you like the content you're seeing, just remind you to like and subscribe below. And let's figure out with the first question. Who is the guy? Is it Jonathan Brooks? Or is it Trey Benson? What are your thoughts, everybody?
For me, it's Brooks. It is close, but I think that, and it would not be close if it wasn't for the ACL injury. The ACL injury is what makes it close for me. But I think he's going to have a lot. He may not even be ready for the first week, but I do think that he's got a clear path to playing time once he's healthy. And I think that he's the guy that I'm taking.
For me, it's the complete opposite. It's Benson all the way. Let's just look at these two players. You got them the same size, same weight, 6 foot, 216 pounds. One runs a 4.39. The other runs a 4.54. One has an ACL injury. One has a lot of competition, Chuba Hubbard, all that. And the other guy has an old, dusty running back, James Conner, about to fall off a cliff. One's on a good offense. One's on a bad offense. Which one do you want a part of? I want the fast guy on a good offense with an old man in front of him. So as soon as that old man takes his leap to the next level, Benson takes his leap to the next level. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he can do everything. This is a prototypical running back. Size, speed, he can play all three downs. That's the running back that I want of those two. They are pretty close. After you look up, and Benson's way better. I want Benson. When Benson's gone, then I might take a Brooks share. But Brooks got some potential maybe down the road. Probably have a slow start. Might not even be there week one with his ACL injury. That's what I think.
I'm going to side with Eric on this one. In fact, in my 5 dynasty leagues I'm in, I've had the opportunity to draft one of these two players twice, and both times I sided with Trey Benson for a lot of the reasons that Eric just mentioned. The size and speed combination. I'm probably going to regret saying this, but when I watch Trey Benson, I see shades of Adrian Peterson. The way he can like explode through the line with his upright rushing style and then break away. I felt like he's a better home run threat than Jonathan Brooks. And that's a big deal in fantasy because you end up scoring touchdowns that way. And then the offense is so much better too. So for me, I mean, it is close, but it's more of a out of 5. I'm 5 leagues. If I was going to take them, 5 total, I'd probably take Benson 4 out of the 5.
Yeah. And I'm going to side with Eric and Zach on this as well. Before I started digging into it a lot, I just assumed I was going to go Jonathan Brooks. He was the first running back taken. Everybody seemed to agree that he was the best talent. But when you actually start diving into the fantasy football aspect of things, looking at video and things like that as well, Benson just jumps off the chart with his athleticism, the testing that he had at the combine. The biggest selling point for me is, as Eric mentioned, James Conner has never played a full season in the NFL. I feel like there's going to be a really great opportunity for Trey Benson to potentially showcase this year that he can be a workhorse running back. And he's playing in what I think might be an elite offense. That's something that I'm going to want as a running back. He averaged over 1,100 yards his last 2 years in college. He does have a little bit of an injury history in the past, but ultimately in the league where I took a running back and I had to decide between one of them when I was on the clock, I chose Benson as well. So for me, it's Benson.
And Connor's on his way out, but he's not going to go away right away. Like, I do think that he's never played a full season, but he's always there. I mean, he usually plays at least 12, 13 games, and he's going to be their guy. And I think he's going to eat up a lot of the workload, at least for this first year.
Time will tell. We've seen him get injured before. All we need it's a running back. Running backs get injured all the time. Next thing, Benson comes in. We've pretty much narrowed down. Benson is my number 1 with Brooks at number 2. But let's talk about second, third, fourth running backs behind these guys. For me, it's Blake Corum. There's also Jalen Wright, and there's also Marshawn Lloyd. Blake Corum comes into a great opportunity. I am not a big fan of Kyron Williams, and that's his competition right now. He has huge upside. He's been able to show that he can do everything, averaging 18 and a half carries per game over the last 2 seasons. That is workhorse potential. He's a little slower than Benson, but on the other hand, when I look at Jalen Wright, I mean, this is a track star. This guy ran a 4.38. When Benson ran a 4.39, he ran a 4.38. Miami is taking all the track stars over to their team, and that's something you want a piece of. Just like we just said with the Cardinals, we have Mostert, 32 years old, about to fall off a cliff as well, and they got an undersized running back in Devon Achane on that team as well. So why would I not want an up-and-coming fast speedster that can do it all at the in that position as well? So I like Jalen Wright. I also like Marshawn Lloyd. I'll throw it at you guys and see who you like between those three.
I'm going to side with you with Blake Corum, and I think he's probably closer to Brooks and Benson than he is Wright and Lloyd. Simply because what you said, he has the ability to be a workhorse running back. Kyron Williams is there, but he kind of came out of nowhere, and a lot of times those guys go back to nowhere. The Rams didn't, draft him with a third-round pick for no reason. If I'm going to give Trey Benson the Adrian Peterson comparison, I'm going to give Blake Corum Maurice Jones-Drew. He's just has that like physical stout build that just gets those extra yards. Then after him for me is Jalen Wright. Probably doesn't have workhorse upside, but I just love his speed. Just a complete game breaker.
Sensing a similar theme here, I also have Blake Corum as my number 3. I do think that he potentially could have an elite role with this offense. Kyron Williams is still there, and even if it doesn't happen this year, I do think eventually Corum will be given the opportunity to take over that offense, and a running back in a McVay offense produces fantasy points. Some things that Blake Corum might need to work on if he really wants to make an impact and get opportunities right out the gate is pass protection, very important, keeping Matthew Stafford protected. That's something he'll need to learn. Otherwise, he might lose some time to the veterans. So I want to see how that progresses throughout the rest of training camp and preseason. And then next for me, like you guys said, Jalen Wright, just an elite offensive weapon going into the dream fit scenario for him. The only negative really is his path side to touches. It looks a little muddy for the near future. And then after that, for me, it's Marshawn Lloyd. I don't think is quite as good of an athlete. And when we start to compare him to Jalen Wright, possibly Blake Corum, it's a crowded backfield. Packers just invested in Josh Jacobs. And it just didn't appear to me to be a very dominant athlete in college. I think he only had 4 games of over 100 plus yards. Those are kind of things that might worry me at the NFL level. If you're not dominating in college, what's going to happen in the NFL?
Going back on Marshawn Lloyd, he did not have maybe a lot of 100-yard games, but he was very efficient with 7.1 yards per carry and 17.8 yards per catch. And he did show signs that he could do both. Plus, he's 220 pounds and he can pass block. He doesn't have a lot in front of him with Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon. He's got a potential chance to get in there and get some opportunity. But Zach, what do you have to say about that?
I'm sorry, did you say he doesn't have a lot in front of him with Josh Jacobs?
No, I think Josh Jacobs at one point was the guy, but since the injuries, he's not the same guy he used to be.
See, I have the complete opposite take. I am a little lower on Marshawn Lloyd because of that. I actually think he's a pretty fun player to watch. And like you said, he's got underrated pass catching ability too. I see him as more of like Jalen Warren or Chase Brown, more of a complementary back because Jacobs is going to be there stealing all the, the heavy lifting.
I've got Jalen Wright as my 3rd running back, and I think he's a great fit in Miami. They have a lot of speed guys. He's a fast guy, and it's going to be crowded for touches, but he's just a couple injuries away from really being in a special role. I think he's just a great fit with that offense. And I think the case against Corum is, I mean, for one thing, it's his age. He's an old rookie. He's going to be 24 years old during the season. And he ran behind a great offensive line in college. And the Rams, they are going to be starting Williams. Whether or not he's the long-term guy, he's at least going to be the guy at the beginning of the season. So I do have Corum in my top 5, but I think there is a case against him. And Marshawn Lloyd, I do like. I think that it is going to be a little bit similar to Trey Benson. I mean, he's got Josh Jacobs in his way, kind of like Benson has Connor in his way right now. And it may not be until next year until Lloyd's able to take over the role, but I do like his talent.
I mean, Josh Jacobs is only 26. Just throwing that out there. But quick question for Marty. Do you like Jalen Wright 3rd because you just love Jalen Wright, or is it because you don't like Blake Corum? Because I'm just trying to think, like,
it's more.
Where would you draft Jalen Wright?
I would
because
draft.
I'm getting him. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would draft him. I would rank him 3rd.
Yeah, but like I'm getting Jalen Wright. I've drafted him in 3 leagues, usually at the end of the 2nd round, beginning of the 3rd. Are you? And like Blake Corum will go in the middle of the 2nd. Like, are you saying like you just love Jalen Wright? I would take him,
Yes.
Middle of the 2nd or earlier. Okay.
It sounds like maybe something we could talk about next year is a lot of us seem to really like Jalen Wright. Most of us seem to also like Corum. So do any of these guys stand out as being comparable to the top tier guys of Benson and Brooks? Or are these guys definitely a tier below and more closer to the next group of guys that we'll get to?
I think
a tier below at minimum. Blake Corum, like I said, probably closer to those top 2 guys, but like Jalen Wright, Marshawn Lloyd, I don't see them as every down running backs. And to me, that puts a big space between them and Brooks and Benson, who I do see as every down running backs.
It comes to me to opportunity. If they get the chance, if Kyron gets injured, if Kyron rolls an ankle, now Blake Corum's going to have a huge bump up. And the same thing with Marshawn Lloyd. If Jacobs gets injured, he's going to take a huge bump up. And Jalen Wright, I mean, if there's anything that happens to A-Chain, Mostert's 32 years old. I mean, huge bump up. So I think all those guys are great potential, maybe even league winners if you can get your hands on some of them in the right opportunity with the right injury in front of them. I'm not going to wish on any injury, but you got to stack these guys on your bench. That way, if something happens, you're not using them until bam, injury, you plug them right in. They're a starter in your lineup.
I'm not sure Jalen Wright is a workhorse, even if Mostert and A-Chain go down. I don't think he's still going to be the every down back. Maybe Marshawn Lloyd would if Dylan and Jacobs went down. But I think Blake Corum definitely would be if Kyron went down.
I mean, they're not going to run any running back in Miami more than 20 times a game. It's just not the flow.
And sometimes 10 opportunities a game is all you need when you got the wheels like some of these.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In Miami.
And Jalen Wright, 7.4 yards per carry in college.
Even if Jalen Wright just takes Mostert's role, to me that's interesting.
His just path to get, to me, the concern with him is his path to get into carries, a bulk of them is just very difficult to see. I think he's one of the most talented running backs from a player perspective, but that fit in Miami, it's just, I mean, like I honestly, Lloyd his path might be easier. All he's got to do is take down one guy or an injury. You need multiple injuries in that Miami backfield to start getting touches. I mean, he'll still be good with the touches he gets. It's just, that's my concern.
Well, one other, sorry, I know Mark's
quickly.
trying to say something, so go ahead.
No, I was just say I think we'll see very quickly what Miami wants to do with Wright. If he is a part of the offense in the first month, that makes me feel much better about maybe acquiring shares that I already had or trying to acquire more shares. If he's not in the offense in the beginning, then it might just be a whole wasted year until Mostert leaves. So I would say when you're on the clock in a Dynasty Superflex draft, how many wide receivers are going in between, these guys between Benson and Brooks down to this tier? Like, is it a lot of, do you have a lot more wide receivers and that's what pushes them down? Where are you guys targeting these players?
Well, I think wide receivers loaded. So that does make a big difference. To me, Brooks, Benson are like late first, early second. Blake Corum's more of a mid second, maybe a little towards the back. And then Jalen Wright's late second, early third. Marshawn, Lloyd mid third.
So we're
kinda
looking
how I
at
have
it. We're looking at a decent sized teardrop.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's based on 12 teams, what I just said.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we do typically see a larger tier gap where there will be a significant amount of players, specifically wide receivers and even some of those quarterbacks that go between the first set of running backs and then this group. But this group does possess, I think, a lot of interesting upside if given just the right opportunity to break for them.
So outside of those running backs, guys, what other running backs are we trying to think of taking later on in the drafts?
Well, I just had one last comment, sorry, on that second tier. And that's just because you guys mentioned Jalen Wright not being able to play right away. I think it's worth pointing out that he is 2 full years younger than both Marshawn Lloyd and Blake Corum. So if he doesn't get started right away, you got more cushion. Whereas Blake Corum and Marshawn Lloyd, time's ticking on those guys. In Dynasty, we do not hold on to running backs long. So, Marshawn Lloyd's 23. I'll give Josh Jacobs 2 more years. Was he going to inherit the backfield at 25? I think that's worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day, like how that goes. It's hard to say. We'll have to see.
Let's talk about the next running backs on the tier. I mean, most people have those top 5 in that top 5, but then it comes down to the rest of the order: Tyron Tracy, Kamani Vidal, Will Shipley, Ray Davis, Dylan Lobby, Audric Estime, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Garendo. There's several running backs there. Is there a running back you're trying to get later in your draft that you think is a good value that you're trying to, add to your team?
I mean, honestly, Vidal is the only other running back that I'm really interested in drafting, just because he has the clearest path to playing time. I mean, I like Gus Edwards. He's an underrated running back. And they got J.K. Dobbins, but both those guys have had an injury history. So Vidal could easily come in and earn a role pretty early on. The draft capital as a 6th round pick is a little scary. And I do think he's a pretty talented running back. So overall, I'd probably take him somewhere in the 3rd, maybe towards the end of the 3rd round.
My favorite running back out of all those we just listed is Tyron Tracy. He's a converted receiver that's now playing running back. He has a 96th percentile agility score, which is the best of any running back in this draft. So as we see the offense is going more pass heavy, this is what you see. You can see him out of the backfield and instead of running those flare routes, he's running streaks up the middle and catching bombs as a running back, which is going to make it very challenging for some of these middle linebackers to guard this guy. So I like him later in drafts, and I think he's got a lot of upside potentially if he gets that role. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get that role, but in these rookie draft, and you want lottery tickets. You want more chances. So I think his upside is better than grabbing somebody else that may never see the field at all. If he does see the field, there's going to be value there because in these PPR leagues, we create value there. Is there another running back that you guys like out of those guys, Marcus, Marty?
I would say for me, a couple other guys that are interesting would be Ray Davis in Buffalo. I think he could possibly fill the Latavius Murray role. They've been looking for somebody who I think they want to, stop running Josh Allen up the gut in the goal line situations. I think Ray Davis will have that opportunity to fill that role, or he could be the goal line back in a good offense. That could be interesting. Also, Audric Estime, I think, might have an opportunity. If you really believe in the talent, might be time now to acquire before Denver starts to make their cuts. They've thrown out rumors that Javonte Williams could be a potential cut or move down to the RB3 role, or it sounds like they're definitely going to be getting rid of P. Ryan. So he has a potential to take over. I think he might be a good fit in that Denver offense. So those are 2 other guys. And somebody really late might be a Rasheen Ali there in Baltimore, just because of the prolific running offense that Baltimore has. He could just be given an opportunity. We saw last year with Keaton Mitchell just coming out of nowhere. Somebody could take on that role. So those are a couple more guys for me.
I
Yeah, I
like the Ray.
think. Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
I like the Ray Davis call. I also like another guy, Marquise Irving. I think that in college he did force a missed tackle 1 out of every 2.5 carries. That's pretty good. Do you guys have any thoughts on Marquise Irving?
He is not on my draft radar.
All right, I guess I'll be drafting him up.
You can get him
Um,
Even
free
for
agents
me.
at the end of it.
Wait, Marty, is that your crystal ball pick?
That's my crystal ball pick.
To
You
me,
can get him deep. You got to compare that to where he's going. You can get him pretty late.
to me, in these later rounds, I'm looking for the handcuffs. I'm looking for Barkley's handcuff, Will Shipley. I mean, he's an athletic guy, and if there's an injury to Barkley, he's coming in. I'm looking for Christian McCaffrey's handcuff, Isaiah Garendo. Now, this guy is a size speed specimen running a 4.33. This guy's got some wheels. If he gets the opportunity in that type of offense, you know, he can hit those holes, and they beat up on their running backs in the past. So if he gets the opportunity, he's got a chance. And the other running back that I like is Braylon Allen. This guy is a monster at 235 pounds. He is a size speed specimen. He's behind Breece Hall. So to me, those are the 3 guys I'm trying to get later, 4th round, 5th round of these rookie drafts, where I'm just stashing them on my taxi squad. I'm stashing them on my roster. If something happens in an injury, bam. These guys are going to be automatic in the lineup type guys. These are going to be free agent guys people want. They're going to be putting out their max fab budget on these players. So those are the later 3 round, three guys I'm looking for later in the drafts.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite strategy. I only want one of these guys if they're going to be my handcuff. Like if I have Derrick Henry, I think Ali makes a lot of sense. If I have Christian McCaffrey, I think Garendo makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just wasting roster spots. But I can see where you would also take the other strategy, but just not for me.
I guess I'll bring this up. We talked about it earlier, Zach, via the text thread. But I'm just curious how you guys think that someone like Tyrone Tracy or Vidal are worthy of that next tier pick behind Shipley, Davis, and Garendo, who were all drafted around 45 picks earlier. I mean, is it just about the fit, or do you guys see things there with Tyrone Tracy and Isaiah Davis, and we just assume the NFL teams made a mistake?
I would say for Vidal, I think it's more opportunity. I think that entire running back situation is very ambiguous. It's not like Gus Edwards and even J.K. Dobbins are players who are going to just have a stranglehold on their position. Vidal,
Sure.
had 6th round draft capital. But I think it's just more situation because you would think John Harbaugh is going to want to run the football, which sounds like that's what the Chargers are going to do. And if you could potentially have a workhorse situation or a guy that can get 10, 12, 15 touches a game because Dobbins gets hurt, Gus Edwards shows he's really not anything special. It's just a lottery ticket. It's nothing I'm spending anything high on, nothing earlier than a late 3rd at most in a dynasty draft.
We've seen players like Isaiah Pacheco go later in drafts and now have some real value. And that's where I see, potentially some of these running backs that are a little more athletic. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone that's athletic, maybe not fully draft capital, because once we get past the first couple rounds, draft capital doesn't matter quite as much. It's nice to have your guys drafted higher because then the coaches are going to be more likely to put them in there. But if they are athletic, what you want is opportunity. And there's a couple things that presented opportunity, the people in the room with them and injuries, one of the two. So that's what I'm really looking for later on in drafts is just a chance at potential playing, whether I start them or whether I trade them away. I want someone that's going to accrue value. And these running backs that are handcuffs, they might not have much value until there's an injury, and now they have value. Whether you use them in your lineup or you're trading them away for a 2nd round pick next year. I mean, you're turning a 5th round pick into a 2nd round pick next year. That's what I see is it's dynasty. We want to accrue value on our teams. We want to create more value on our teams, and that's one way that I like drafting running backs later in draft because later in drafts, I'm not looking for a receiver that might be the number 3 option on a team. I don't want the number 3 option in my lineup at all. I want studs at receiver. I'm not looking for the number 3. And that's what you can get with these running backs. You can get a running back that comes in there and they're going to be a monster. They're going to be a hammer. And they're going to, if they get the opportunity, they get 20 carries a game because they're the only option, or you trade them away.
Yeah, and I personally kind of just think, NFL teams, they know more than we do when it comes to drafting and scouting these players, but also their goals are different than ours. The 49ers may have drafted Garendo thinking this guy can come in and either relieve McCaffrey on a drive or two a game or as a backup to McCaffrey. That's their goal by drafting him in the 4th round. That's not our goal when we're talking about dynasty football. So just different aligned goals, kind of like what Eric's talking about, is we're shooting for upside. I think that kind of creates that difference.
All right, I think we've covered it all. Let's go through crystal ball picks for the end of the show, everybody. Eric, who are you taking no matter what?
Trey Benson, that's who I have the most of any player in this draft. I am snacking him late first, early second round picks as much as I can. So I'm taking a lot of Trey Benson, put it on the board.
Zach?
I am also taking a lot of Trey Benson, but my crystal ball pick will be Jalen Wright.
Jalen Wright for me as well.
Okay.
I'll go with a more riskier pick and go with Vidal. He is somebody who I took a little bit later. I've spent a lot of my earlier picks drafting wide receivers this year. Only have one share of Benson and nobody else up top. So for me, I'm going to go out with the riskier pick and say Vidal.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Crystal Ballers. Remember to like, comment, subscribe below, and we will see you next time when we cover probably part 1 of the receivers.
Do
All right,
it.
thanks, everybody. See
See
you.
you, boys.